Hello, my name is Chris Ferguson from Stetson University, and I'm here to talk about a research study that is set to be published with the Journal of Mass Violence Research, and it is entitled Exposure to Bullying, Childhood Trauma, and Violence in Video Games Among Perpetrators of Mass Homicide. So very excited to see this come out. I'm very excited to talk to you today about it. Before I begin, I did want to mention my co-author, actually lead author, Miranda Sanchez, who is my student. She is recently graduated from Stetson University, so she is on to bigger and better things, kind of leaving me here today to give you this introduction to the research that we did. And kind of briefly, so what we wanted to look at were these common beliefs about mass homicide perpetrators. These are individuals who have committed, in this case, looking at firearm violence, so they shot and killed at least 4 individuals. And what we wanted to do is look to see if these common beliefs about these individuals was true, namely that they experience more bullying in their childhoods, that they are exposed to more abuse in their families of origin, and that they play more violence in video games. So oftentimes you hear about the sort of link between, or supposed link between mass homicide and violence in video games. So we want to see if there's any truth, to that. Of course, this is all correlational data, but interesting nonetheless. So we used a database called the Violence Project, which is run by another research group. It's a database of mass homicide perpetrators who've used firearms, and they, again, have killed at least 4 individuals. And what we did was take the males in this database, so there are a few females as well, but we just stuck with just the males, which made it a little bit easier to find comparison samples. So we looked at this population of mass homicide perpetrators and compared them to samples of young men who were not mass homicide perpetrators to see if there was difference between these groups of individuals. And so we found some interesting things. So we're kind of going in order. Related to bullying, contrary to what many people might have thought, and even what we kind of thought, is, at least in this analysis, in this sample, the perpetrators of mass homicides did not experience any more or less bullying than other males. So bullying is kind of common, but this particular group of people had not experienced it more than anybody else did. So kind of challenging that common notion. Related to abuse in the family, perhaps less surprisingly, we did find that mass homicide perpetrators had experienced more abuse in their families of origin, substantially more abuse, in fact, or at least was substantially more common among this sample. So that one is a common belief that appears to be true. And lastly, related to violence in video games, we found something really interesting, that we did find a difference between the mass homicide perpetrators and sort of the general population of men. It just was in the opposite direction of what most people might think, that mass homicide perpetrators actually had played fewer violent video games than men in the general population. So playing violent video games is actually very common among young males. And so it actually looks like perhaps there's just something unusual about mass homicide perpetrators, that they don't engage in these kind of normal activities that other individuals engage in, and therefore we just did not see that mass homicide perpetrators were playing a lot of violent video games, and that maybe that in of itself is kind of a strange red flag. So again, not only are we sort of challenging this myth about violent video games being being a factor in mass homicide perpetrators, but again, if anything, the evidence suggests it works in kind of the opposite direction. So those were sort of our main results. We thought they were pretty interesting. We thought they were pretty exciting. Now, again, it's important to emphasize that these are correlational results. We can't make causal attributions from this data. Nonetheless, I think it helps us point us in the right direction of some things that might be meaningful if we're interested in understanding this phenomenon better, and also helps us to avoid some things like, regulating violence in video games that is unlikely to be very helpful if we're really serious in trying to reduce these types of crimes. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, you're always welcome to drop me an email, and I will try to answer them. Thank you. Bye-bye.